Hi, Megan. Thanks for your time to look over this and help me with a current ethical dilemma. For this dilemma, I'll be using the adjusted Kuchar and Keith Spiegel's decision model. Um, I've out I've outlined the approach listed here, along with a quote from Rogerson et al. That summarizes the importance of having an effective model, which is by acknowledging the complex multiple influences on ethical decision making, psychologists may be better prepared to address difficult professional decisions and to make more responsible actions in the face of uncertainty. So the ethical dilemma I have is Angela is a recipient of support, has told me that when she gets poor grades, her father locks her in a bedroom and she can't see her friends, and she's asked me not to tell anyone. So I have the dilemma of whether to respect Angela's right to autonomy and confidentiality for not telling anyone about her father's abuse or neglect, which looks at confidentiality standard A5.1. And I'm required to report Angela's father for being intentionally neglectful or abusive, which is confidentiality standard A 5.2. Looking at these codes further, A 5.1 looks to safeguard the confidentiality of information obtained during psychological services for Angela. And I need to consider my legal requirements on how I disseminate the information confidentially. So it would be unethical for me to share Angela's disclosure unless I'm required to by law. Comparatively, though, A 5.2 states psychological disclosure. Psychologists disclose confidential information under certain circumstances. In this case, sections A and B apply to me, as there is a legal obligation to do so, and there is an immediate risk of harm to Angela if I don't. So as I will cover shortly, I'm required to by law to share this information. If I don't, it'd be unethical as Angela is at risk of further harm. A couple of things to consider. The APS guidelines are a bit unclear because it doesn't actually speak specifically about minors. So Angela's mother is my client, Angela's recipient of service. So generally speaking, I would speak to Angela about decisions made for Angela's health, but because Angela's asked me not to, that's a bit tricky with confidentiality or autonomy. And I just thought I'd outline, I'll be using the deontological ethics approach when making decisions. This is because the APS Code of Ethics or guidelines would have been created through a very rigorous process to protect those who affects. Any action I take will be based on these rules and the law and should therefore be the moral thing to do. In Victoria, we use the Children, Youth and Families Act of 2005. So these principles adapted to Angela. Three main principles would be that the best interest of Angela must always be paramount. Whenever determining whether a decision or action is in the best interest of Angela, I must consider the need to protect her from harm, protect her rights, and promote her development. And any decisions I make must consider Angela's views and wishes should be reasonably ascertained. But that is, in this case, kind of where the issue starts, is because Angela's wishes of me not sharing anything is the ethical dilemma itself. I also need to consider the effects of cumulative patterns of harm on child safety and development, which I'll cover shortly. I am also a mandatory reporter on this act, so I must report once I have reasonable grounds that a child is in need of protection. Um, so with values, it's important for me to consider all influences that might make me make a decision, whether it's conscious or unconscious, and decisions that are made on a psychologist's values may violate ethical codes or even violate laws. So I need to make sure that I'm not biased with my decisions. To help me with this, I've looked at the values trap test on Think to Perform, which has shown me that I have a strong value of family, which means that I really like to keep a family unit together, which may mean that any idea of potentially splitting up a family would be quite triggering for me or quite tough for me. With my personal experience, I'm a male, so I might be unconsciously biased and empathetic towards a man's situation. With work experience, I'm a teacher of 10 years. I've worked in the wellbeing team and have been a year 10 coordinator. Through this, been regularly exposed to the effects of neglectful and abusive parents. With this experience, I may not think clearly because I'm certainly biased, or I might be biased, and I have strong feelings towards neglectful parents. It's also important to consider the rights and vulnerabilities of everyone involved. First of all, there's no current legal court order in place, and both parents have shared custody, so they both have the same rights. But I'll start on that note. I'll start with rights. So Angela has the right to autonomy, confidentiality, and justice. She has the right for child protection, and her best interests are paramount. Angela's parents have the right to be involved in decisions for Angela, have access to Angela's health records, and to be treated fairly without discrimination, favoritism, or stereotypes. And myself, I have the right to professional autonomy, the right to protect the interests of the people with whom I work with. But all our vulnerabilities, so Angela, with what she's going through, would have quite a lot of emotional and psychological stress, and basic needs not met from her father. The parents been recently divorced. The mental, emotional, financial, and legal toll of their divorce process would be quite extreme. And because of that, they would be recently divorced, alone, and potentially likely quite stressed. For myself, the occupational stress of dealing with abused children is quite confronting, and particularly with my experience as well. It's something that I've had to deal with quite a lot, so it's a confronting area for me. It does also relate to the guilt of betraying Angela's request. So the fact that she's asked me to do something and I potentially might not do it is quite damaging to me. So two possible decisions for option one is to make the report and let Angela and her mum know about the report if it's appropriate. Or option two is don't report the dad and let Angela help Angela deal with the situation as best as possible. So two key consequences. First one, the positive consequence if I do report is her father may have access rights removed, which might mean that Angela has reduced harm from her dad, and her and her mum might be able to have access to supported services. I'll also meet my legal requirements. The negative consequences is I've included again that the father could have access rights removed, as she might not see her father for a long time, and he may have played a positive role in her life in other ways. So just because he has a very bad reaction to her poor grades, outside of that, he may have a positive aspect of her life. It could also, another negative is that might also lose trust of the profession of psychology from Angela due to me breaking confidentiality. The positives of not reporting include respecting Angela's wishes, which may build trust with me and other psychologists. For the negatives, I've included Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a psychological perspective. As outlined in the Children, Youth and Families Act, decisions need to factor in the development of a child, which is where Maslow's comes in. So if her basic needs of food and safety are not met due to her father withholding food, then her more advanced needs such as education may not be able to be met. And so this can lead to a bit of a vicious cycle where the maltreatment leads to poor grades, which leads to a cycle of abuse, which leads to, kind of repeats itself. And studies have shown that ongoing abuse can lead to impaired lifelong physical and mental health and social cognition deficits. So the decision I'm going to go with is I will report it. A couple of different reasons why I'm legally required to do so. It's in the best interest of Angela, and it's also going to help protect Angela from harm and promote her development. And I'll do it by reporting to the DFFH, and depending on what they tell me, if it's appropriate, I'll tell Angela and her mum, and I'll help Angela understand the importance of sharing information and why I had to do it, and I'll provide ongoing support to Angela and her mum if need be, if I'm capable. Some references, and thanks so much for your help.